U.S. Airways Flight 1549 was a regularly scheduled U.S. Airways flight from New York City's LaGuardia Airport to Charlotte and Seattle, in the United States. On January 15, 2009, the Airbus A320 serving the flight struck a flock of birds shortly after takeoff from LaGuardia, losing all engine power. Given their position in relation to the available airports and their low altitude, pilots Chesley Sully Sullenberger and Jeffrey Skiles decided to glide the plane to ditching on the Hudson River near Midtown Manhattan. 2. All 155 people on board were rescued by nearby boats. There were no fatalities, although 100 people were injured, some seriously. The time from the bird strike to the ditching was less than 4 minutes. The governor of New York State, David Paterson, called the incident a miracle on the Hudson. 3, 4, 5, and a National Transportation Safety Board official described it as the most successful ditching in aviation history. 6. Flight simulations showed that the airplane could have returned to LaGuardia had it turned toward the airport immediately after the bird strike. 7. However, the board found that scenario did not account for real-world considerations, and affirmed the ditching as providing the highest probability of survival, given the circumstances. 889. The pilots and flight attendants were awarded the Master's Medal of the Guild of Air Pilots and Air Navigators in recognition of their heroic and unique aviation achievement. 9. Background. N-106 U.S., the aircraft involved in the accident. On January 15, 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, with call sign Cactus 1549, was scheduled to fly from New York City's LaGuardia Airport, LGA, to Charlotte Douglas International Airport, CLT, in Charlotte, North Carolina, with direct onward service to Seattle Tacoma International Airport. The aircraft was an Airbus A320-214 powered by two CFM International CFM56-5B4/P turbofan engines. The pilot in command was 57-year-old Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger, a former fighter pilot who had been an airline pilot since leaving the United States Air Force in 1980. At the time, he had logged 19,663 total flight hours, including 4,765 in an A320. He was also a glider pilot and expert on aviation safety. 13, 14, 15. The second in command, co-pilot, was First Officer Jeffrey Skiles, aged 49, 13, 16, 17. Who had accrued 15,643 career flight hours, including 37 in an A320. 8, but this was his first A320 assignment as pilot flying. 18, there were 150 passengers and 3 flight attendants on board. 19, 20. Accident. Takeoff and bird strike. New York Tracon Audio. Duration, 3 minutes and 10 seconds. 3 to 10. Air traffic control audio from about time of bird strike until ditching, 3:10 long. Problems playing this file? See media help. The flight was cleared for takeoff to the northeast from LaGuardia's runway 4 at 15:24 and 56 seconds Eastern Standard Time, 20:24 and 56 seconds Universal Time Coordinated. With Skiles in control, the crew made its first report after becoming airborne at 15 hours 25 minutes and 51 seconds as being at 700 feet, 210 meters, and climbing, 21. The weather at 14:51 was 10 miles, 16 kilometers, visibility with broken clouds at 3,700 feet, 1,100 meters, wind 8 knots, 9.2 miles per hour, 15 kilometers per hour, from 290°. An hour later, it was few clouds at 4,200 feet, 1,300 meters, wind 9 knots, 10 miles per hour, 17 kilometers per hour, from 310°. 8:24 at 15 hours 26 minutes and 37 seconds, Sullenberger remarked to Skiles, "What a view of the Hudson today." 22. The Hudson River from above the Bronx, with Manhattan in the diagonal center and New Jersey in the distance. The George Washington Bridge is at right, Central Park Reservoir at upper left, and Teterboro Airport at the right center, within the elbow of the Overpeck Creek. The aircraft headed approximately north after takeoff, then wheeled anti-clockwise to follow the Hudson southwards. Flight path flown, red. Alternative trajectories to Teterboro, dark blue, and back toward LaGuardia, magenta, were simulated for the investigation. At 15 hours 27 minutes and 11 seconds, during climb-out, the plane struck a flock of Canada geese at an altitude of 2,818 feet, 859 meters, about 4.5 miles, 7.2 kilometers, north-northwest of LaGuardia. The pilot's view was filled with the large birds, wink with a frown 23, 24. Passengers and crew heard very loud bangs and saw flames from the engines, followed by silence and an odor of fuel, 25, 26, 27. Realizing that both engines had shut down, Sullenberger took control while Skiles worked the checklist for engine restart. C8. The aircraft slowed but continued to climb for a further 19 seconds, reaching about 3,060 feet, 930 meters, at an airspeed of about 185 knots, 213 miles per hour, 343 kilometers per hour, then began a glide descent, accelerating to 210 knots, 240 miles per hour, 390 kilometers per hour, at 15 hours 28 minutes and 10 seconds as it descended through 1,650 feet, 500 m. The citation needed. At 15 hours 27 minutes and 33 seconds, Sullenberger radioed a Mayday call to New York Terminal Radar Approach Control, TRACON, 2930. This is Cactus 1539, sick. Correct call sign was Cactus 1549, hit birds. We've lost thrust on both engines. We're turning back towards LaGuardia. 22, Air Traffic Controller Patrick Harton, 31, told LaGuardia's tower to hold all departures, and directed Sullenberger back to runway 13. Sullenberger responded, unable. 30. Sullenberger asked controllers for landing options in New Jersey, mentioning Teterboro Airport. 30, 32, 33. Permission was given for Teterboro's runway 1, 33. Sullenberger initially responded, yes, but then, we can't do it. We're gonna be in the Hudson. 32. The aircraft passed less than 900 feet, 270 meters, above the George Washington Bridge. Sullenberger commanded over the cabin address system to brace for impact. 34. And the flight attendants relayed the command to passengers. 35. Meanwhile, air traffic controllers asked the Coast Guard to caution vessels in the Hudson and ask them to prepare to help with the rescue. 36. Ditching and evacuation. Duration, 8 minutes and 8 seconds. 8 to 08. Coast Guard video of the water landing and rescue. About 90 seconds later, at 15:30, the plane made an unpowered ditching, descending southwards at about 125 knots, 140 miles per hour, 230 kilometers per hour, into the middle of the North River section of the Hudson tidal estuary. At 40.769444 degrees north 74.004444 degree W, 37, on the New York side of the state line, roughly opposite West 50th Street, near the Intrepid Museum, in Midtown Manhattan and Port Imperial in Weehawken, New Jersey. According to FDR data, the plane impacted the river at a calibrated airspeed of 125 knots, 140 miles per hour, 230 kilometers per hour, with a 9.5 degrees pitch angle, flight path angle of -3.4 degrees, angle of attack between 13 degrees and 14 degrees, and a descent rate of 750 fpm. 48 flight attendants compared the ditching to a hard landing with one impact, no bounce, then a gradual deceleration. 32. The ebb tide then began to take the plane southward. Sullenberger opened the cockpit door and gave the order to evacuate. The crew began evacuating the passengers through the 4 overwing window exits and into an inflatable slide raft deployed from the front right passenger door. The front left slide failed to operate, so the manual inflation handle was pulled. The evacuation was made more difficult by the fact that someone opened the rear left door, allowing more water to enter the plane. Whether this was a flight attendant, 39, or a passenger is disputed. 8, 41, 40, 41, 42. Water was also entering through a hole in the fuselage and through cargo doors that had come open. 43. So as the water rose, the attendant urged passengers to move forward by climbing over seats. One passenger was in a wheelchair. 45, 46, finally, Sullenberger walked the cabin twice to confirm it was empty, 47, 48, 49. The air and water temperatures were about 19 degrees Fahrenheit -7 degrees Celsius and 41 degrees Fahrenheit 5 degrees Celsius, respectively. 8:24 Some evacuees waited for rescue knee-deep in water on the partially submerged slides, with some wearing life vests. Others stood on the wings or, fearing an explosion, swam away from the plane. 39 One passenger, after helping with the evacuation, found the wings so crowded that he jumped into the river and swam to a boat. 32, 50, 51. Rescue. 2 New York waterway ferries arrived within minutes, 52, 53, and began taking people aboard using a Jason's cradle wink with a frown. 34, numerous other boats, including from the U.S. Coast Guard, were quickly on scene as well. 54, Sullenberger advised the ferry crews to rescue those on the wings first, as they were in more jeopardy than those on the slides, which detached to become life rafts. 34. Failed verification, the last person was taken from the plane at 15:55, 55. About 1:40 New York City firefighters responded to nearby docks, 56, 57, 58, as did police, helicopters, and various vessels and divers. 56. Other agencies provided medical help on the Weehawken side of the river, where most passengers were taken. 59. Boats surround the tail of the sunken plane, visible just above the waterline. Aftermath. The partially submerged aircraft tied up alongside Battery Park City. Passengers and crew sustained 95 minor and 5 serious injuries, 6 including a deep laceration in the leg of one of the flight attendants. 32, 61, 78 people received medical treatment, mostly for minor injuries, 62, and hypothermia wink with a frown. 63, 24 passengers and 2 rescuers were treated at hospitals, 64, with 2 passengers kept overnight. Eye damage from jet fuel caused 1 passenger to need glasses. 50, no animals were being carried on the flight. 65. Each passenger later received a letter of apology, $5,000 in compensation for lost baggage, and $5,000 more if they could demonstrate larger losses, and a refund of their ticket price. 66, 67. In May 2009, they received any belongings that had been recovered. Passengers also reported offers of $10,000 each in return for agreeing not to sue U.S. Airways. 68. Many passengers and rescuers later experienced post-traumatic stress symptoms such as sleeplessness, flashbacks, and panic attacks. Some began an email support group. 69. Patrick Harton, the controller who had worked the flight, said that the hardest, most traumatic part of the entire event was when it was over, and that he was gripped by raw moments of shock and grief. 70. A few months after the crash, Captain Sullenberger, while being interviewed by AARP magazine, was asked how he was able to execute a nearly perfect water landing. He replied, "One way of looking at this might be that for 42 years, I've been making small, regular deposits in this bank of experience, education, and training. And on January 15th, the balance was sufficient so that I could make a very large withdrawal." 71. In an effort to prevent similar accidents, officials captured and exterminated 1,235 Canada geese at 17 locations across New York City in mid-2009 and coated 1,739 goose eggs with oil to smother the developing goslings. 72. As of 2017, 70,000 birds had been intentionally killed in New York City as a result of the ditching. 73. N-106 U.S., the accident aircraft, was purchased by the Carolinas Aviation Museum, since renamed to Sullenberger Aviation Museum, in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it, and the plane's engines, was put on display. Investigation. The plane being recovered from the river during the night of January 17th. The partially submerged plane was towed downstream and moored to a pier near the World Financial Center in Lower Manhattan, roughly 4 miles, 6 kilometers, from the ditching location. 35. On January 17th, the aircraft was taken by barge 78-79 to New Jersey. 80. The left engine, which had been detached from the aircraft by the ditching, was recovered from the riverbed on January 23, 81. The initial National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, evaluation that the plane had lost thrust after a bird strike, 82, 83, 84, was confirmed by analysis of the cockpit voice and flight data recorders, 85. It was found in the investigation that 2 days before the accident, the aircraft had experienced a compressor stall, 86, 87, on the right engine, but the engine had restarted and the flight was completed. A faulty temperature sensor was found to be the cause of the compressor stall. This sensor had been replaced and the inspection also verified the engine had not been damaged in that incident, 88. On January 21, the NTSB found evidence of damage from a soft body impact in the right engine along with organic debris including a feather, 89, 90. The left engine also showed soft body impacts, with dents on both the spinner and inlet lip of the engine cowling. 5 booster inlet guide vanes are fractured and 8 outlet guide vanes are missing. 91, both engines, missing large portions of their housings. 92, were sent to the manufacturer for examination. 91, on January 31, the plane was moved to Kearney, New Jersey. The bird remains, 88, 93, were later identified by DNA testing to be Canada geese, which typically weigh more than engines are designed to withstand ingesting. 88. Since the plane had been assembled in France, the European Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, the European counterpart of the FAA, and the Bureau of Inquiry and Analysis for Civil Aviation Safety, BEA, the French counterpart of the NTSB, joined the investigation, with technical assistance from Airbus and GE Aviation/SNECMA, respectively the manufacturers of the airframe and the engines. 94, 95, 96. Goose feather found in the left engine. The NTSB used flight simulators to test the possibility that the flight could have returned safely to LaGuardia or diverted to Teterboro. Only 7 of the 13 simulated returns to LaGuardia succeeded, and only 1 of the 2 to Teterboro. Furthermore, the NTSB report called these simulations unrealistic. The immediate turn made by the pilots during the simulations did not reflect or account for real-world considerations, such as the time delay required to recognize the bird strike and decide on a course of action. A further simulation, in which a 35-second delay was inserted to allow for those, crashed. 8:50 in testimony before the NTSB, Sullenberger maintained that there had been no time to bring the plane to any airport and that attempting to do so would likely have killed those on board and more on the ground. 97. The board ultimately ruled that Sullenberger had made the correct decision. 97, reasoning that the checklist for dual-engine failure is designed for higher altitudes when pilots have more time to deal with the situation, and that while simulations showed that the plane might have just barely made it back to LaGuardia, those scenarios assumed an instant decision to do so, with no time allowed for assessing the situation. 7. On May 4, 2010, the NTSB issued its final report, which identified the probable cause as the ingestion of large birds into each engine, which resulted in an almost total loss of thrust in both engines. 8:123 The final report credited the outcome to 4 factors: good decision-making and teamwork by the cockpit crew, including decisions to immediately turn on the APU and to ditch in the Hudson, that the A320 is certified for extended overwater operation, and hence carried life vests and additional raft/slides, even though not required for that route, the performance of the flight crew during the evacuation, and the proximity of working vessels to the ditching site. Contributing factors were good visibility and fast response times from the ferry operators and emergency responders. The report made 34 recommendations, including that engines be tested for resistance to bird strikes at low speeds, development of checklists for dual-engine failures at low altitude, and changes to checklist design in general to minimize the risk of flight crew members becoming stuck in an inappropriate checklist or portion of a checklist, improved pilot training for water landings, provision of life vests on all flights regardless of route, and changes to the locations of vests and other emergency equipment, research into improved wildlife management, and technical innovations on aircraft to reduce bird strikes, research into possible changes in passenger brace positions, and research into methods of overcoming passengers' inattention during pre-flight safety briefings. 8:124. Author and pilot William Langewiesche asserted that insufficient credit was given to the A320's fly-by-wire design, by which the pilot uses a side stick to make control inputs to the flight control computers. The computers then impose adjustments and limits of their own to keep the plane stable, which the pilot cannot override even in an emergency. This design allowed the pilots of Flight 1549 to concentrate on engine restart and deciding the course, without the burden of manually adjusting the glide path to reduce the plane's rate of descent. 55. However, Sullenberger said that these computer-imposed limits also prevented him from achieving the optimal landing flare for the ditching, which would have softened the impact.